I am Emeritus Professor Vukan R. Vucic. I was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia for 43 years. Now I'm continue to be active giving lectures at many universities around the world, at many companies. I do some consulting in different parts. Russia and Moscow are very interesting area for me, and I have been in contact in recent years. Otherwise, my profession is transportation systems engineering, all forms of transportation, engineering and planning aspects, but focus is on urban transportation. And in connection with that, I was also professor of city and regional planning. So I'm an expert in transit systems design and operation, and highway design and operation, and then broader city planning and how we coordinate transportation for future cities, how we operate, and how we design what I refer to as livable city, a city that is pleasant to live in, which is economically sound and socially sound. Ever since I was a small boy, I was interested in transportation. I was driving little cars and tramways and so on. And when I was growing up in Belgrade, Serbia, I always had that interest and followed what was, how the transportation was developed. And then when I was a student, a faculty of transportation engineering was founded, and I studied there and got my diploma. Then I worked for a year in Hamburg, Germany, and then went to the United States, worked for some time, and then studied at the University of California in Berkeley, and got my master's and PhD degrees. Then I lectured in Philadelphia again on the East Coast. And I have written several books, including so-called trilogy on transit systems of urban общественный transport of the cities. I have written a book on transportation for livable cities, which has been translated into Russian. Города с удобной жизнью, Transport и города с удобной жизнью. Other books have been translated into Chinese, Japanese, and Serbian. I have lectured at 100 different universities around the world. And I have my former students in many countries at many different positions, greatly influencing development of the transportation, particularly urban transportation. I do have a family. I have a wife of 53 years now, 4 children and 8 grandchildren. Originally, I was a Yugoslav, now Serbian, as the Serbia came out from Yugoslavia. And I am now also an American citizen, and I'm very glad to come to Moscow because as a boy I was reading Ruskiye Сказки, I was reading Russian authors, Tolstoy and Pushkin and so on. I studied some Russian. I'm not fluent, but I speak some Russian. And I also like classical music, and Tchaikovsky is one of the best in the world, I think, and many others, Glinka and Rimsky-Korsakov and others. And therefore, I'm glad that in recent years I have come to Russia several times, and I'm participating here in Russian cities, solving problems and trying not to repeat the mistakes from other countries, but to develop modern cities which are attractive to its citizens and to visitors, and so-called livable cities. Well, I think engineering is a very exciting field. It's a creative field. It's also one that allows you to do theory and theoretical studies as well as applied. That means I have never gone into extreme theory which cannot be applied. I have applied theories or taken problems from real world in the cities and solved them by theoretical or mathematical methods. Transportation is a very interesting branch of engineering, which is not only mechanical, about parts of machines and vehicles and so on, but it's really a complex system. And it interacts with human society and with the type of city that we build, so that we transportation engineers, to a large part, we are quite enthusiastic about our field and the field of urban transportation and things like high-speed rail and various other systems. And especially in recent years, the emphasis has been on systems engineering. How do we handle complex systems like transportation or in some other fields? What is so-called systems thinking? And environmental aspects, sustainability aspects, all these broader aspects of the cities, societies, and future, and our role of engineers and planners is what I think is the challenge of the profession. And as I developed from design of streets and metros and so on to planning entire cities, that's how the profession has also broadened, and my students enjoy working on these very comprehensive problems in many cities of the world. Well, the problem is that we can find engineering solutions, but in many cases, especially in transportation, it's not only physical design and operation of systems, but it is interaction between transportation and the society. So how do you apply? If you know a good solution, you have to get support of people to introduce that, and you have to do economic analysis. You have to look at the environmental aspects and so on. So this breadth and complexity is something very challenging. But most of us transportation systems engineers enjoy solving such problems. I see a lot of perspective because the societies are changing, and they're changing now very fast, and cities are changing with them. Health of cities is important for health of the entire countries and economy and social structure and so on. Our task is rather complex, how to make transportation system that helps mobility and helps economy of the city, but doesn't has also moderate cost, and it's economically and socially feasible to use. It's a challenge how to update, and how, when you get proposals for innovations, what system do you take to evaluate the feasibility and possibility and future of such a system. Well, what it is in planning, financing, and operating different systems, and coordinating the streets and highways with automobiles on one side, and public transportation on the other side, and the role of pedestrians, and how do we encourage pedestrians, and how does all that make cities attractive and livable. Those are the challenges that are facing us, it's interesting to study how different countries are doing, and one of my studies in recent years has been to group the cities. Some cities which are really have very serious problems in urban transportation and don't know how to solve anything. Another type of cities thinks, well, congestion, inefficiency, that's how it goes. It must go like that. And some cities which says, no, it does not have to be inefficient. We can control that. And there is an increasing number of cities which have taken this complex systems approach and planned urban transportation policies to achieve livable cities. So that's the challenge, and that's what's expecting also my former students who are now teaching the next generations. Engineering is a creativity. It is systematic thinking. It is tends to be systems complicated to imagine some engineering device or structure or infrastructure, and then see how it would work, and would it be useful, would it be accepted by people, would it be financed by politicians, and so on. So to suggest to the city what to do about transportation is very important, and there are many, many different options and many proposals. What are the necessary political decisions, economic decisions, and engineering and planning solutions? Well, students, I am known from my former students that I gave them a lot of enthusiasm. So when I teach transportation, it's always enthusiastic, and I take them to the field and show them several cities and transit system. We run the whole day and show them what's the real world and what is the theoretical approach to it, and they love it. And many of them who came to my course once stayed in the field of transportation. So I think my achievements and awards that I got and so on are pretty good, books written and so on, but I think that my greatest contribution is that I educated several hundred people who are now all working in the field and very largely developing further my ideas and my philosophy, and we all are interested in social good and societal interest rather than conservative attitudes and independent development of individual system elements. We are talking about complex transportation systems in order to achieve livable cities and sound countries with transportation networks.